For 1,000 years, the galaxy thought Sector 0 was a prison for monsters. They were wrong. It wasn't a prison, it was an armory. And the humans inside weren't locked up, they were just waiting for a real fight. High Elder Zoltan sat in his chair on the space station known as the Eye. It was the most important job in the galaxy, but it was also the most boring. For 300 years, Zoltan had watched the stars. His people, the Keep Watchers, were not fighters. They were observers. They had large eyes to see far into the dark, and thin, weak bodies that hated gravity. Their job was to watch over the thousands of peaceful alien races in the galaxy and make sure trade ships were safe. The Eye was silent, cool, and dim. The only light came from the thousands of blue and green lights on the massive control panels. These lights showed that the galaxy was safe and happy. Zoltan sighed and rubbed his wrinkled forehead. He looked at the far corner of his control console. There, covered in a thin layer of gray dust, was a single, separate panel. It had no buttons, only a small glass case covering a physical keyhole, and one light bulb. That light was supposed to be red, but no one alive had ever seen it turn on. The ancient book said that the red light had been asleep for 1,000 years. It was connected to Sector 0, a part of space that was empty on every map. Young Keep Watchers made jokes about it. They said ghosts lived there. Zoltan did not laugh at those jokes. He knew that some things were locked away for a reason. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. It was not the soft chime of a trade ship. It was a harsh, loud buzzer. Zoltan jumped in his seat. His heart beat fast in his chest. The room turned dark, and the blue lights on the panels turned off. In the corner, the dust on the forgotten panel shook. The light under the glass flashed. Red. 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 It was a bright, angry color that hurt Zoltan's sensitive eyes. The warning had started. The galaxy was no longer safe. Zoltan's shaking fingers pressed the button for the main screen. "Report," he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "Show me the source of the alarm." The giant screen on the wall flickered to life. It showed the visuals from a deep space camera near the Orcs colony. The Orcs were a gentle race of farmers. The screen showed their planet, usually green and blue, but now a shadow was falling over it. A tear had opened in the fabric of space. It looked like a black wound in the universe. Out of this darkness came the ships. They did not look like ships. They looked like giant, dead insects made of black iron. They had no lights and no windows. They moved with a jerky, unnatural speed. Zoltan watched in horror as the leading ship, which was the size of a city, opened its front. It did not fire lasers. Instead, it opened massive mechanical jaws. It clamped onto the orbital defense station of the Orcs colony. Metal screeched against metal. The sound was transmitted through the sensors, a terrible grinding noise. The enemy ship was eating the station. The consumers. Zoltan whispered the ancient name. He had thought they were just a myth, a scary story to tell children. But they were real. They were a swarm that moved from galaxy to galaxy, stripping planets of all metal, water, and life. They did not want peace. They only wanted to eat. "Launch the defense fleet," a younger Keep Watcher screamed from the lower deck. Zoltan nodded, though he felt cold inside. He watched as the shiny, elegant ships of the Keep Watcher fleet zoomed toward the black monsters. The Keep Watcher ships were beautiful, shaped like silver tears. They fired their plasma beams. Bright bolts of energy hit the thick, black armor of the consumer ships. But the energy just splashed off like water. The black armor absorbed the heat instantly. The consumer ships ignored the attacks for a moment, then they turned. They released thousands of smaller fighters. These small ships moved like angry hornets. They swarmed over the beautiful silver ships of the Keep Watchers. They used physical claws and drills to tear the engines out of the peacekeeping vessels. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. In less than 10 minutes, the debris of the Keepwatcher fleet was floating in space. The consumer ships turned back toward the planet below. They began to descend into the atmosphere, ready to feast on the cities of Eoria. Zoltan gripped the arms of his chair so hard his fingers hurt. He could hear the screams of the Eoria people over the radio channels. The Galactic Council was calling him on another line, demanding answers, demanding a miracle. But Zoltan had no miracle. The weapons of the modern galaxy were built for police work, not for war. They had forgotten how to fight a true monster. The galaxy had been peaceful for too long. They were soft. They were weak. He looked back at the flashing red light in the corner. The alarm was still screaming. That light was the only thing left. It was connected to the time lock in Sector 0. The legend said that inside Sector 0 was a species so dangerous, so violent, and so crazy, that the ancient Keepwatchers had to trick them into a deep sleep just to keep the rest of the universe safe. They were called the Terrans. Zoltan stood up. His legs felt like jelly. He walked across the room toward the dusty panel. The other Keepwatchers stopped panicking and looked at him. They saw their High Elder, usually a coward, walking toward the forbidden box. Zoltan reached into his robe and pulled out a heavy, physical key. He had worn it around his neck every day for 80 years, never thinking he would use it. High Elder, a young officer asked, his voice trembling. What are you doing? Sector 0 is a prison. You cannot open the cage. The monsters inside will destroy us all. Zoltan looked at the screen. He saw the Eoria planet burning. He saw the black insect ships eating the world. He looked at the young officer with sad, tired eyes. The consumers will kill us all today, Zoltan said softly. The monsters in Sector 0 might kill us tomorrow. I choose tomorrow. He blew the dust off the keyhole. The red light flashed on his face, making him look like a demon. With a deep breath, he inserted the key into the lock. It made a loud click that echoed through the silent room. He turned it. On the main screen, coordinates appeared. A signal was sent across the galaxy, straight into the dark, cold void of Sector 0. The signal was simple. It was a wake-up call. Zoltan closed his eyes and prayed. He had just unlocked the cage of the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. He hoped they were hungry. The alarm in the High Council chamber was deafening, but the silence from the politicians was even worse. High Elder Zoltan stood alone in the center of the room. The hologram screens around him showed the destruction of the Eoria colony. The black insect ships of the consumers were finishing their meal. The planet Eoria was now just a dead rock. The council members, representing a dozen gentle alien races, stared at Zoltan with wide, terrified eyes. They knew what he had done. He had turned the key. He had invited the nightmare back into their reality. You have doomed us all, the representative of the Glitter people whispered. The Terrans were locked away because they were uncontrollable. They are beasts. They do not know peace. If the consumers do not eat us, the Terrans will burn us. Zoltan did not apologize. He looked tired. He walked to the window of the space station and looked out at the stars. The consumers are eating our children right now, Zoltan said firmly. The Terrans might be monsters, but at least they are our monsters. I am going to meet them. If I do not return, then pray to your gods. He turned and left the room. He walked to the hangar bay where his personal ship, the Silent Watcher, was waiting. It was a small, fast vessel, designed for stealth, not war. He launched the ship into the void. His destination was Sector 0. The navigation computer flashed a warning, restricted space. Turn back. Zoltan overrode the warning. The ship's engines hummed as they pushed him into warp speed. The stars stretched into long lines of light, and then he was there. Sector 0 was different from the rest of the galaxy. In normal space, there is always background noise, energy from stars, radio waves from distant civilizations, the warmth of nebulas. But Sector 0 was cold. It was absolute zero. There were no nearby stars to give light. It was a pocket of dark space that felt heavy, like walking into a graveyard at night. Zoltan shivered inside his thick robes. His sensors showed nothing but dust and old asteroids for millions of miles. Then, he saw it. In the center of the darkness, floating like a jewel in black mud, was the time lock. It looked like a giant bubble made of golden glass. It was huge, big enough to hold an entire solar system inside. The surface of the bubble rippled like water, but it did not break. Inside this bubble, time had stopped exactly 1,000 years ago. The ancient Keep Watchers had built this because they could not defeat the humans in war. The only way to stop the humans was to freeze them in a moment of time forever. Zoltan's hands shook as he piloted his small ship closer to the golden wall. He could see blurry shapes inside the bubble. There were planets frozen in their orbits. There were ships frozen in mid-flight, looking like toys trapped in amber. It was a museum of violence. He opened the communication channel on his ship. He had to transmit the unlock code that the key had generated. He typed the sequence into the computer. It was a long string of numbers that translated to a simple command, resume. He pressed enter. For a moment, nothing happened. Zoltan held his breath. He thought perhaps the ancient machine was broken. He thought perhaps they were truly doomed. Then, the golden bubble began to vibrate. The sensors on Zoltan's ship screamed as a massive wave of energy hit him. The gold color turned white, then transparent. The bubble shattered. It did not break like glass, it evaporated like mist in the morning sun. The barrier was gone. Time started moving again. Zoltan expected silence. He expected the humans to take days or weeks to wake up from their long sleep. He was wrong. The moment the barrier vanished, his radio exploded with noise. It wasn't just one signal, it was thousands. It was a chaotic storm of sound. There was screaming, loud aggressive music with heavy drums, military orders, and commercial advertisements. It was a wall of noise that hit Zoltan like a physical punch. The humans weren't sleeping in pods. The time lock had frozen them while they were awake. When the bubble popped, they just continued exactly what they were doing 1,000 years ago. Zoltan looked at the main view screen. In front of him was the human solar system. He saw the blue planet, Earth. It did not look like the peaceful, green worlds of the Council. It looked like a fortress. The space around the planet was filled with metal. There were thousands of satellites, space stations, and shipyards. The planet glowed in the dark, not from nature, but from the electric lights of massive cities that covered entire continents. Suddenly, a radar alarm blared in Zoltan's cockpit. Lock detected. Lock detected. Zoltan panicked. He tried to turn his ship around, but it was too late. A ship had appeared on his radar. It had been hiding in the shadow of a moon. It was moving impossibly fast toward him. Zoltan zoomed the camera in to see the human ship. It was ugly. Alien ships were smooth, curved, and silent. This human ship was a block of dark gray steel. It had sharp edges, exposed pipes, and massive engines that spit out dirty, red fire. It looked like a flying brick with guns strapped to it. It didn't look like it wanted to talk, it looked like it wanted to hurt something. The human ship pulled up alongside Zoltan's delicate vessel. The human ship was 10 times larger. Its cannons rotated and pointed directly at Zoltan's cockpit. A harsh, static-filled voice cut through the radio speakers. It spoke in the trade language, but the accent was thick and rough. Unknown vessel, the voice barked. It sounded like gravel grinding together. You have entered Terran Federation space. You have 10 seconds to identify yourself, or we will turn you into scrap metal. 10, 9, 8. Zoltan scrambled for his microphone. He dropped it, picked it up, and pressed the talk button. Wait. Do not fire. I am High Elder Zoltan of the Keep Watchers. I am the one who unlocked the barrier. I come to ask for help. The countdown stopped at 4. There was a long silence on the radio. Zoltan could hear the faint sound of humans talking in the background of the transmission. They were laughing. They were not scared of the alien ship, they found it funny. The rough voice came back. The barrier is down. Well, it's about time. We were getting bored in here. The massive human ship moved closer, casting a shadow over Zoltan. Follow us, little alien, the voice commanded. Take us to the things that are scaring you. We haven't had a good fight in a millennium, and the Admiral is in a bad mood. Zoltan slumped back in his chair, sweat running down his face. The stories were true. The humans were insane. He had come to ask for help against a galaxy-eating swarm, and the humans sounded like they had just been invited to a party. As he followed the flying brick of a ship towards Earth, Zoltan realized the galaxy had changed forever. The polite silence was over. The noise had begun. Zoltan's small, elegant ship shook violently as it followed the massive human vessel down toward the planet. The ride was not smooth. Keepwatcher ships usually glided through the air like feathers. But the human ships tore through the sky like falling rocks. The atmosphere of Earth was thick and turbulent. Clouds whipped past his window, dark and heavy with rain. Lightning flashed close to his wings, but the human ship ahead of him did not care. It just punched a hole through the storm. Below him, the surface of Earth appeared. It was a terrifying sight for a peaceful alien. Most civilized planets in the galaxy were designed to be gardens. They were green, quiet, and gentle. Earth was a machine. As Zoltan descended, he saw cities that looked like circuit boards made of concrete and steel. Factories pumped white steam into the gray sky. There were no soft curves here, only sharp angles and hard lines. The planet itself looked like it was wearing armor. Landing coordinates received, the computer chirped. Zoltan guided his ship toward a massive black square of asphalt in the middle of a desert. This was not a spaceport for tourists. It was a military base. As his landing gear touched the ground, Zoltan felt a heavy weight press down on his chest. It was the gravity. Earth's gravity was 1.5 times stronger than the galactic standard. To Zoltan, it felt like he was wearing a suit made of lead. He unbuckled his seatbelt and fell forward, gasping for air. Just standing up on this planet was a workout. The airlock hissed open. Zoltan stumbled down the ramp, his thin legs shaking under the weight of the world. The air smelled strange. It smelled of burning fuel, hot metal, and something sharp, ozone. It was an aggressive smell. He was immediately surrounded. Hundreds of figures stood in perfect lines on the tarmac. They were humans. They were shorter than Zoltan, but they were twice as wide. They wore bulky green and gray armor that looked heavy enough to crush a normal alien. They held weapons that looked like portable cannons. Their faces were covered by dark visors, making them look like faceless robots. They stood perfectly still, not making a sound. The discipline was frightening. A vehicle drove up to Zoltan's ship. It was a jeep with big, knobby tires. A man stepped out. He was not wearing a helmet. He wore a simple cap and a brown jacket. He had gray hair cut very short, and a scar ran down the side of his jaw. This was Commander Stone. He walked toward Zoltan with a heavy, confident step, ignoring the high gravity that was crushing the alien. Zoltan tried to stand tall, but he was hunched over. "I am High Elder Zoltan," he wheezed. "I come, with a warning." Commander Stone looked the alien up and down. He didn't bow. He didn't offer a formal greeting. He just chewed on a small wooden toothpick. "You look like you're about to pass out, Elder," Stone said. His voice was deep and rumbled in his chest. Welcome to Earth. Sorry about the gravity. We like it heavy. Keeps the bones strong. Stone waved his hand, and the rows of soldiers relaxed slightly. Come inside. You can tell me why you woke us up from our nap. And it better be good. I was having a nice dream about fishing. They walked into a concrete bunker. The walls were thick enough to stop a nuclear bomb. Inside, the air was filtered and cool. Stone sat at a metal table and poured a black liquid from a pot into 2 mugs. He slid one toward Zoltan. Coffee, Stone said. It's a stimulant. Drink it. It will help your heart pump against the gravity. Zoltan took a sip. It was bitter and hot, but he felt a rush of energy. He placed a small data pad on the table. It projected a hologram of the consumers. It showed the video of the Orcs colony being eaten. It showed the black insect ships swarming the stars. These are the consumers, Zoltan explained, his voice trembling. They appeared yesterday. They have already destroyed 3 systems. Our weapons, our lasers do nothing. They absorb energy. They eat metal. They are endless. The Galactic Council is in a panic. We calculated that within 6 months, they will eat the entire galaxy. Zoltan looked at Stone, expecting to see fear. He expected the human to pale, to ask how to hide, or to ask where the safe zones were. Commander Stone stared at the hologram. He watched the Orcs station get crushed. He watched the insect ship swarm. He didn't blink. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a smile that showed too many teeth. It was the smile of a predator seeing prey. Energy absorbers, huh? Stone muttered. He tapped the table. And they eat metal? That's cute. Cute. Zoltan cried out. Commander, they are unstoppable. We have nothing that can hurt them. Stone laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. You aliens and your lasers. You forgot the basics. You forgot Isaac Newton. Stone stood up and walked to a red phone on the wall. He picked it up. He didn't scream. He didn't shout. He spoke quietly. This is Stone. Authorization Alpha 9. The vacation is over, boys. Unlock the kinetic cannons. Prepare the fleet for deployment. We have bugs to squash. He hung up the phone and looked at Zoltan. Come outside, Elder. You should see this. They walked back out onto the tarmac. A siren began to wail across the entire base. It was a low, mournful sound that vibrated in Zoltan's bones. The ground began to shake. Zoltan thought it was an earthquake. He looked toward the mountains in the distance. The top of the nearest mountain began to split open. Dust and rock fell away as massive steel doors slid back. From inside the mountain, a barrel rose up. It was a gun. But it was the size of a skyscraper. It pointed toward the sky. Then, the ocean near the coast began to churn. Giant whirlpools formed in the water. Huge, dark shapes rose from the depths. They were ships, but not like the one Zoltan had seen earlier. These were dreadnoughts. They were kilometers long, covered in thick armor plates, bristling with hundreds of physical guns. They blocked out the sun as they rose, water cascading off their sides. Zoltan fell to his knees. The sheer power on display was overwhelming. The humans hadn't been hiding in Sector 0. They had been building. They had spent 1,000 years turning their entire solar system into a loaded gun. You said their armor absorbs lasers, Stone said, lighting a cigar. The smoke drifted into the air. Let's see how well they absorb a 20-ton tungsten slug moving at 10% the speed of light. Stone offered a hand to help the terrified alien up. Stop shaking, Zoltan. The consumers are the ones who should be scared. They just kicked the door to the wrong house. For the first time in centuries, Zoltan didn't feel weak. Standing next to the human, he felt something else. He felt safe. But looking at the giant guns and the rising fleet, he also realized the terrible truth. The consumers were a plague, yes. But the humans? The humans were the cure, and the cure was much, much more violent than the disease. The space around the ruined Aurea colony was filled with smoke and fire. The consumer fleet was busy. They were stripping the planet, tearing down cities, and sucking up the oceans. The few remaining Keepwatcher ships were hiding near the edge of the solar system, afraid to move. On the main screen of the Galactic Council, the leaders of a dozen worlds watched in silence. They were waiting for death. They had lost hope. Then, the sensors screamed. It was not the smooth, musical ping of a warp drive. It was a violent tearing sound, like thunder rolling through space. Space did not just open, it was ripped apart. A massive hole in reality appeared near the Aurea moon, and the human fleet arrived. They did not look like heroes. To the elegant aliens, the human ships looked like floating garbage. The Keepwatcher ships were silver and curved, shaped like art. The human ships were gray, blocky, and ugly. They looked like flying factories. They had no glowing lights, no spinning rings, and no grace. They were covered in thick plates of scarred metal. "These are the saviors?" a counselor asked, his voice full of doubt. "They look primitive. They do not even have energy shields. Look. Their engines are burning dirty chemical fuel. They are thousands of years behind us." On the bridge of the human flagship, the Hammer of Dawn, Commander Stone sat in his captain's chair. He heard the aliens talking on the open channel, but he ignored them. The gravity on the ship was heavy. The air was cold. Stone looked at the tactical map. The consumer ships had stopped eating the planet. They turned their black, insect-like heads toward the newcomers. "Targets acquired, sir," the weapons officer said. She was calm, chewing gum. 300 enemy vessels. Cruiser class. "They are charging weapons," the sensor officer added. "High-energy plasma incoming." The consumer ships fired first. Beams of purple energy, hot enough to melt a moon, shot across the darkness. The Galactic Council gasped. They expected the human ships to explode instantly. The beams hit the Hammer of Dawn. There were no blue energy shields to stop them. The beams hit the bare metal of the hull. Fire washed over the human ship. "Direct hit," a Keepwatcher shouted. "They are finished." The smoke cleared. The Hammer of Dawn was still there. There was a large black scorch mark on the front armor, but the ship was fine. The humans did not believe in energy shields. They believed in armor. They had wrapped their ships in 10 meters of solid titanium and carbon. The laser beams just made the metal warm. "Armor integrity at 98%, the human officer reported. "Hull temperature rising slightly." "Paint is scratched, sir." Commander Stone nodded. "They rely on energy weapons. They think heat is the only way to kill. Let's teach them about kinetic energy." He leaned forward. "All ships, load main batteries. Magnetic acceleration cannons. Solid tungsten slugs. Fire at will." The other aliens were confused. They did not see any lasers charging up. The human ships remained dark. Then, the human ships shuddered. From the front of the blocky human vessels, invisible death was launched. These were not lasers. They were solid metal bullets, each the size of a car. Giant magnets pushed these bullets out of the barrels at a speed close to the speed of light. Physics took over. In space, a laser burns the surface. But a solid object moving that fast hits with the force of a nuclear bomb. The first slug hit a consumer ship. There was no shield flare. There was no slow melting. The consumer ship simply shattered. One moment it was a terrifying black warship, the next moment, it was a cloud of dust and sparks. The bullet punched through the front, went through the entire length of the ship, and exited the back, tearing the vessel inside out. Impact confirmed, the officer said. Target destroyed. Keep firing, Stone ordered. Don't stop until the radar is empty. The human fleet unleashed hell. It was a storm of metal. The consumer ships tried to absorb the energy, but you cannot absorb a rock moving at 50,000 miles per second. The alien ships were smashed, crushed, and broken. The elegant silence of space was filled with the brutal efficiency of human engineering. Zoltan watched from his small ship, his mouth open. He had never seen violence like this. The Keep Watchers fought with precision, they tried to disable ships. The humans fought with rage, they tried to erase the enemy from existence. A consumer destroyer tried to ram the Hammer of Dawn. It was a suicide tactic. The insect ship flew fast, aiming for the bridge. Brace for impact, Stone said, not even spilling his coffee. The human ship did not move. It did not dodge. It turned slightly so its thickest armor faced the enemy. The consumer ship smashed into the human hull. It was like an egg hitting a brick wall. The alien ship crumpled and exploded against the human steel. The Hammer of Dawn shook, but it kept flying through the debris of its enemy. They are retreating. Zoltan shouted over the radio. The consumers are running away. For the first time in history, the black insect ships were afraid. They turned their engines away from the flying bricks and tried to flee into deep space. They are running, Commander, the weapons officer said. Chase them. No, Stone said. He looked at the radar. A new signal was appearing. It was huge. It was not a ship, it was a moving moon. Hold position, Stone ordered, his voice getting serious for the first time. The small bugs were just the appetizers. Here comes the main course. From the tear in space, the consumer mothership emerged. It was colossal. It blocked out the stars. It was covered in thousands of cannons, and its center glowed with a sickly purple light. It was big enough to swallow the human fleet whole. The Galactic Council began to panic again. It is too big, they screamed. You cannot shoot that. It is the size of a planet. Commander Stone looked at the giant monster on his screen. He didn't look worried. He looked annoyed. Size doesn't matter if you know where to hit it, Stone said. He pressed a button on his console that turned the ship's internal lights to red. All hands, prepare for close-quarters combat. We are not going to shoot it from here. We are going to get personal. Zoltan shivered. The humans had just destroyed an entire fleet without a scratch, and now they wanted to fly closer to the monster. He realized then that the Keep Watchers had been wrong about the humans. They weren't just soldiers. They were madmen. The consumer mothership was not just a ship, it was a floating moon made of black iron and nightmares. It hung in space, blocking the light of the local star. Its surface was crawling with millions of insect drones, repairing the damage from the human railguns. The human bullets had punched deep holes in the armor, but the beast was too big. It was like shooting a whale with a needle. It hurt, but it did not kill. On the bridge of the Hammer of Dawn, the red alarm lights spun wildly. The sensor officer turned to Commander Stone, his face pale. Commander. Energy spike detected in the enemy core. They are charging a world-breaker beam. If they fire, they will vaporize our fleet and the planet behind us. High Elder Zoltan, watching from his small scout ship, screamed over the radio. Commander Stone. You must retreat. You cannot stop that weapon. Run while you can. Commander Stone stood up from his chair. He adjusted his cap. He looked at the giant purple light gathering in the mouth of the enemy ship. It looked like the eye of an angry god. Retreat? Stone asked, his voice calm. We don't know that word. Navigation, plot a course. Where to, sir? The pilot asked. Straight down the throat, Stone said. If the armor is too thick on the outside, we'll kill it from the inside. Zoltan gasped. You are mad. You cannot fly inside an enemy ship. It is suicide. It's not suicide, Elder, Stone replied with a grin. It's a boarding party. All power to forward shields. Engines to maximum. Ramming speed. The hammer of dawn, a blocky brick of steel, did not turn away. It roared forward. The engine spit out a trail of blue fire. The ship flew straight toward the opening where the giant weapon was charging. The consumer mother ship fired its defense lasers. They burned the hull of the human ship. Metal melted. Alarms screamed. But the ship kept going. Brace for impact. Stone yelled. The human ship smashed into the open hangar bay of the mothership. The sound was terrible, metal shrieking, glass shattering, and the crunch of crushing rock. The hammer of dawn plowed through the enemy decks like a bullet going through a cake. It smashed through walls, crushed enemy fighters, and finally came to a screeching halt deep inside the belly of the beast. The ship was stuck in the middle of the enemy fortress. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency red lighting. Marines. Stone grabbed a shotgun from under his desk. You know the drill. Clear the path. We have a package to deliver. The airlock doors of the human ship blasted open. Smoke poured out. But the consumers were waiting. Thousands of insect warriors, each the size of a horse, swarmed the hallway. They had sharp claws and acid spit. They clicked and hissed, ready to eat the intruders. Then, the humans stepped out. They were not in ships anymore. They were face to face. And this was where the humans were terrifying. The insect aliens were used to fighting weak species, species that evolved on low-gravity worlds, species that ran away. Humans evolved on a high-gravity death world. Humans hunted mammoths with pointed sticks. A sergeant led the charge. He didn't use a laser. He used a heavy machine gun that fired explosive rounds. Let's rock and roll, he shouted. The fight was brutal. The insects were fast, but the humans were stronger. When an insect claw hit a human marine, it scratched the armor. When a human punched an insect, the insect's shell shattered. It was a massacre. The narrow corridors of the alien ship echoed with the boom of shotguns and the roar of flamethrowers. Zoltan watched the video feed from the human helmet cameras. He felt sick, but he also felt awe. They are not fighting like soldiers, he whispered. They are fighting like wild animals. Commander Stone led his team to the central core. It was a massive chamber, glowing with purple energy. This was the heart of the mothership. It was pulsating, alive. Here is the plan, Stone shouted over the noise of battle. He pointed to a large metal box two soldiers were carrying. It was a tactical nuclear warhead. We leave the bomb. We leave the ship. We go home for dinner. Sir. The soldiers planted the bomb on the reactor core. Stone set the timer. Back to the ship. Move. Move. Stone ordered. The humans ran back the way they came, shooting insects as they went. They scrambled back into the hammer of dawn. The airlocks hissed shut. Pilot. Get us out of here. Stone yelled, strapping himself into his chair. The engines are damaged, sir. We're stuck in the wreckage, the pilot screamed. The timer clicked down. 2 minutes. Push it. Stone roared. Use the emergency boosters. The pilot slammed his fist on a big red button. The ship groaned. The engines coughed, and then ignited with a violent explosion of power. The hammer of dawn lurched forward. It didn't turn around. It smashed its way out through the other side of the mothership. It tore through the outer hull, bursting out into the cold vacuum of space like a cork popping from a bottle. Behind them, the timer hit 0. There was no sound in space, but the light was blinding. The center of the mothership turned white. The nuclear fire mixed with the alien energy core. The massive insect ship bloated for a second, like a balloon filling with too much air. Then, it ripped apart. A shockwave of pure energy swept across the system. It vaporized the remaining insect fighters. The pieces of the mothership, burning and dead, drifted away into the dark. Silence returned to the battlefield. Zoltan stared at his screen. The hammer of dawn was floating in the distance. It was covered in black scorch marks. Pieces of it were missing. It was smoking. It looked like a wreck. Commander Stone. Zoltan called out, his voice shaking. Are you alive? For a long moment, there was only static. Then, a cough. We're here, Elder, Stone's voice came through. It sounded tired but amused. Just a little scratched up. But I think we got them. Zoltan sank back into his chair. His hearts were beating so fast he thought they would explode. The humans had flown inside a death machine, fought an army of monsters in the dark, blew it up, and walked away. You are insane, Zoltan said, but this time, he said it with respect. Maybe, Stone replied. But we're the ones you call when you want the bad guys dead. Now, about that coffee. The Keep Watchers had spent 1,000 years afraid of the dark. But now, they knew the truth. The most dangerous thing in the dark wasn't the monsters. It was the humans who hunted them. The battle was over. The silence of space returned, but it was different now. Before, the silence felt empty. Now, it felt heavy. The debris of the consumer mothership floated in the void like a graveyard of black metal bones. The millions of insect invaders were dead, frozen in the cold dark. High Elder Zoltan piloted his small ship alongside the Hammer of Dawn. The human flagship was a mess. It was covered in burns. Entire sections of armor were missing. Antennae were bent. It looked like a piece of trash that had been thrown into a fire and pulled back out. But it was still flying. Its engines hummed with a deep, angry sound that vibrated through Zoltan's own hull. Attention, human vessel, Zoltan said into the radio. The Galactic Council requests your presence. We need to talk. Copy that, Commander Stone replied. His voice sounded tired. We are docking. Do you have any food? We ran out of snacks in the last century. The scene in the High Council chamber was chaotic. The leaders of the 12 alien races were shouting at each other. They were not celebrating the victory. They were terrified. They had watched the humans fight. They had seen the brutality, the nuclear weapons, and the madness of the boarding party. We have made a mistake, the representative of the glitter people squeaked. We traded one monster for another. The consumers wanted to eat us. The humans will destroy us just for fun. Did you see them? They flew inside a ship. We must put them back in the cage, another counselor shouted. Lock Sector 0 again. Throw away the key. The doors to the chamber slid open. The room went dead silent. High Elder Zoltan walked in. He walked differently now. He did not hunch his shoulders. He did not look at the floor. He walked with his head high. Behind him came Commander Stone. The human looked out of place in the beautiful, clean room. The council chamber was white and gold, with soft lights and floating chairs. Commander Stone was wearing dirty gray combat armor. There was dried green blood from the insect aliens on his boots. He smelled like gunpowder, sweat, and machine oil. He looked like a wolf walking into a room full of rabbits. Stone took off his helmet. He had a bandage on his forehead. He looked at the terrified aliens and frowned. "Why is everyone so quiet?" Stone asked. His voice echoed in the large room. "We just saved your lives." Usually, people say, "Thank you." The head counselor, a tall, thin being with purple skin, stood up. He was shaking. We thank you, Earthman. But now, we must discuss the terms of your conquest." Stone blinked. "Conquest?" "Yes," the head counselor said, bowing his head. "We know how this works. You are the strongest. You defeated the consumers. Now, you will take our planets. You will take our resources. We only ask that you be kind masters. Please, do not hurt our children." The other aliens nodded, waiting for the bad news. They expected Stone to demand gold, slaves, or territory. Commander Stone looked at Zoltan. Then he looked at the council. He started to laugh. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was a confused laugh. "You think we want your planets?" Stone asked, wiping a tear from his eye. "Have you seen your planets? The gravity is too low. If we lived on your worlds, our muscles would turn to jelly in a month. And your air? It's too clean. It has no taste. And your food is just leaves and paste." Stone shook his head and sat down on a delicate floating chair. The chair groaned under his weight. "Listen," Stone said, leaning forward. "We don't want to rule you. Do you know why we went into the time lock 1,000 years ago?" The aliens shook their heads. Zoltan stepped forward. "I have read the true history now," Zoltan said. "We thought we locked them away because they were criminals. But that is not true. They locked themselves away." The council gasped. "We are dangerous," Stone admitted. "We know that. We are good at war. We are too good at it. A long time ago, we realized that if we stayed in the galaxy, we would accidentally hurt you. You are fragile. We are loud. So, we made a deal with the ancient Keepwatchers. We agreed to go to sleep. We agreed to stay in our cage until a threat came that was too big for you to handle." Stone pointed a finger at the screen showing the dead consumer fleet. "That was the deal. We are the guard dogs. You don't let the dog sleep in the house, but when the wolves come, you let the dog out." The head counselor looked stunned. "So, you are going back to sleep?" "Mostly," Stone said. "But we have some new terms for the treaty." The room tensed up again. Here it comes, they thought. The demands. "First," Stone said, holding up one finger. "We want the lock off. No more barriers. We want to be able to come out and stretch our legs. Maybe visit some uninhabited moons for target practice." "Agreed," the head counselor said quickly. Second, Stone held up a second finger. "Coffee." "I beg your pardon," the alien asked. "Coffee," Stone repeated. "Beans. Caffeine. We can't grow it well in Sector 0. The artificial suns aren't right. We need a steady supply of coffee, chocolate, and maybe some of that spicy root from the Aurea system. Send a trade ship once a month. If the coffee is late, we get cranky. You don't want to see us cranky." The aliens looked at each other. They were confused. The most dangerous fleet in history just wanted snacks. "That is all," the head counselor whispered. "That is all," Stone said. He stood up and put his helmet back on. "We have a lot of repairs to do. And I have a fishing trip I missed." Stone turned to leave, but he stopped next to Zoltan. He put a heavy hand on the elder's shoulder. Zoltan did not buckle under the weight this time. "You did good, Zoltan," Stone said softly. "You have guts. If you ever want to see real mountains, come to Earth. Just bring a gravity suit." With that, the human commander walked out. The heavy thud of his boots faded away. 1 month later. High Elder Zoltan sat in his chair on the eye. The station was quiet again. The repairs were finished. The galaxy was at peace. He looked at the corner of his console. The dust was gone. The panel was clean. The red warning light was dark. Instead, a steady, calm green light was glowing. The cage was open. The humans were awake. A young keepwatcher walked up to Zoltan. "Hi Elder," she said nervously. "A human trade ship has just entered the sector. They are hailing us. They say they are here for the Java delivery." Zoltan smiled. It was a genuine, happy smile. "Let them through," Zoltan ordered. "And lower the shields. They are friends." The young officer looked at the screen, where the blocky, ugly human ship was moving past. "Are you sure, sir? They are still terrifying." "Yes," Zoltan said, looking out at the stars. "They are terrifying. They are monsters. But for the first time in history, I am not afraid of the dark." He took a sip from his mug. It was filled with a hot, black liquid that smelled like burnt earth. "Because the monsters are on our side."